Welcome to One-on-One with Expert Flyer. This is your host, Lisa Caslin, and I am delighted to introduce today's guest, Lea Lane, and she is a super traveler. That's the only way I can describe her. She's also a travel journalist. She currently works for Forbes.com, and she's just written a wonderful book called Places I Remember, Tales, Truths, Delights from 100 Countries that she has visited. So let's say hi to Lea. How you doing?
Hi. How are you today?
Hi. So we met in Japan. Lucky me.
Yeah, we met. I don't remember. Were you in the earthquake, or were you walking down the street? Yes.
We were on top of the hotel. Yeah.
Yes. We were sitting there. Yeah, I remember.
Yep.
We were just sitting there looking out at the view, and all of a sudden the chandelier started to move, and we're all thinking, "What is this?" And remember, the sound was earthquake, 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 and we thought,
I know, and I was losing it, and everybody around me that was Japanese was just completely nonplussed about the whole thing.
I know.
Don't worry about it. It happens every day.
We walked away from the window, I think, for a while, and then the thing about that was so interesting is a part of our group. When we told them about this, wasn't this terrible? They said, "What earthquake?" They were walking around the street. They didn't feel it, but we were on the top of a 40-story building, and it was swaying back and forth. Yeah, so that was interesting.
Oh boy, I know that is my number one memory from my visit to Japan.
Right. Well, I've been back since. And
it's
an interesting country in so many ways. It's one of 100 countries in the book, and it's not the easiest country. I've been there by myself. I've been there with groups, and while it's a wonderful place, it's daunting, and it can be kind of crowded, but it's fascinating, and one of the many fascinating places I've been.
Yeah. So tell me, it's hard to believe that you have been traveling for 50 years. That is
I know.
That's a chunk of time. You must
be old.
No. You must have seen a lot of changes, particularly, in places that you've been, maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago and have visited again.
Well, that's, I think, one of the most fascinating things about this book, because I divided A to Z from Andorra to Zimbabwe, and all the countries, each one is alphabetical. You go through it, you can pick and choose, but part of it is the changes. And I've been, as I mentioned, in Japan. I've been 2 or 3 times there, and it's been different every time. And sometimes it's extraordinarily different in a country where you can't believe it, such as China, for example. I was there in 1982, I believe. And when I went that time, I was walking around a little village, and a man came up to me, and he literally came up to my face, nose to nose practically. He was looking me up and down as if I were some artifact. He hadn't seen a Caucasian person. And I thought, wow, this is something else. And then I was back, I think, in 2016, and the place was the future, and it was exactly the opposite. It was unbelievable in 20 or so years what's happened. And in some countries, you don't see that much change, but it's always interesting. There's always something new whenever you travel. There's always new things to find out and to discover.
Of course. So what inspired this? What made you do this book now?
Well, I started it about a couple of years ago, I would say, and lots going on in the world, and it's just a lovely, delightful thing to get away from the difficulties going on and just sort of think about the places you've been. So I just thought about it. I'd been to maybe over 120 countries, so I got to pick and choose from that, and sort of went through my whole through my head and thought, which of the countries I would want to write about, and it was so much fun to do that alone. And then I started to sort of think about it as I wrote each country down and thought about the most interesting tales and things I've learned and things I wanted to share. And then I just started doing it, and it was a pleasure to do it. And by the way, it's an illustrated book. There are magnificent illustrations by an artist named Greg Carell. And he took 70 of my own photos, and illustrated them. So it's a beautiful book. and I'm very proud of it. And it was a delight to do it with him. He's so talented.
Yeah, it sounds terrific. So tell us about some of the tales, and particularly the ones that you had to warn your family about, and why they stood out for you, and where they happened.
Well, let me think. I'll keep this interesting, but G-rated. Let's see.
R-rated.
Well, R-rated. Yeah, right. Not G. There's one very short tale. It was just basically, it was in Malawi, Africa, and I was there with a press group. I went on many press trips as a travel writer, and this was one of them. And Malawi is a landlocked country. It isn't very well off. You know, there's a lot of poverty, and so we were there to kind of help them out a little in travel and tourism, and so we were at a function, and at these kinds of things, very often you are asked to join in, if there's a dance or something, and, they bring people from the audience. And so somebody came and got me, and a dancer, and he started to dance, and he said, come with me and dance. So he sat down and did all kinds of hand movements, and I sat down and did the hand movements, and he got up, and I got up, and I just was mirroring him. I did the best I could. I'm not very good at that, but I figured it was the right thing to do. So everybody started laughing. I thought, I'm not a very good dancer, but I don't know why they're laughing so much. So I went back to sit down, and I said, well, what is it? Why are you laughing so much? And they said, well, your new name is Ngunda, and you two are now married.
What?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, he was my husband, right? He never calls, he never writes. But he was my husband. So anyway,
you went through a marriage ceremony and you didn't even know it.
No, I never hear from him. I know he was a good dancer, though. I mean, that was positive. But that was an interesting tale. I mean, those are the kinds of things that you remember, of course, and it was very short. But, I've never heard from them since. But that was fun. Oh,
boy. Okay. All right. Anything else?
There are many. There are, hundreds, actually. But, well, let's see. I was in Finland. I was with a group there, and the leader of the group was very big on having us take saunas. That's the little rooms where you go in and it's dry heat. Yeah, so I was with this press group, and we all were sitting around. Well, the women were in one group and the men were in another, and we're all sitting around taking these saunas. And there was one woman there from Finland. She wasn't an American writer. She was from Finland. And so we're fine. She's asking us lots of questions, and we were grousing and complaining of the heat, and we always had to take saunas, and we weren't happy about it. And she's taking notes. And then when we got back to the States, I heard from one of the journalists who said, "Did you see our person who was with us was not a travel writer. She was an investigative reporter, and she was writing about Americans who complain all the time." And and she was sitting, And then I looked at the article, and I saw my name was quoted. It was all in Finnish, and I had no idea what I said. I probably said, "This is the ugliest group of naked people I've ever seen," or something like that. But I'll never know because I didn't want to look. So, so I'm quoted in this. It was like the major newspaper in Finland, but I have no idea what I said. And sometimes things like that happen.
That's not fair.
Never know. No, it wasn't fair. She was a mole.
Talk about being vulnerable.
She was a mole. She wasn't a writer. She was like a spy.
Yeah.
So,
all right. So if you had to maybe, I know it must be difficult. 100 countries, 120 countries. If you had to pick maybe 3 that would entice you so much that you'd actually consider living there, what would they be?
Oh, living there. Well, when I was maybe 20 years ago, I did consider. I was dreaming about living on this island called Procida. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's by Capri. It's near the Amalfi Coast in Italy.
Oh,
it's
sure. Gorgeous.
Yes, tiny little fisherman's village. And at that time, I was single and sort of thinking, gee, this wouldn't be so bad to retire to this little island and sort of learn Italian from some local fisherman or something and just drive a Vespa around the town and write a novel and go into, Naples or to the Amalfi Coast every so often. So that would definitely be a place I wouldn't mind moving to. New Zealand is another great destination. It has everything. It's a little far, and I do have a family, so that probably would leave that out. But that would be another place I would love to stay longer. Really get to know it more. And I don't know. I love most places. I mean, I wouldn't mind living in Paris. Would you?
Yeah, no, I think that's on everybody's list, right?
Yep.
If you can afford it. Well, what about the States? Do you have a favorite place in the United States of America?
Oh, sure. I think there are absolutely charming places all over this country. I've discovered them in the last 20 or so years. I've been really trying to find the character of this country and sort of snooping around a bit more in the smaller towns. I just love I love all the areas of this country that have a lot of scenery. So, dramatic scenery. So I love Utah and the coast of California, the coast of the East Coast around Maine. But small towns in the Midwest have charm as well. I think one just has to dig a little bit and look beyond where, tourists always go and find smaller, venues and talk to people. And I think this country is one of the most blessed of any. And I still have a ways to go. I have not been to a couple of the states. Have not been to either of the Dakotas, and I haven't been to Oklahoma. I haven't been to Iowa, I don't believe. There are places I still would like to visit very much in the States.
Good. All right. So if you were going to give someone advice on taking, that special trip, what's on your radar right now? Where do you think one should go if they really want that special, memorable trip?
Well, depends, of course, what their interests are. I think right now there are certain places that are so crowded, it's a shame. For example, Venice, which I'm sure you've heard, they are now charging to come into the center of Venice. It's become so crowded. What I would say is, if you go, try to go when the crowds are less, wherever you go, when the locals are dominating the area and not, tourists. So I would say off-season, shoulder season, spring or fall is the best time to go almost anywhere. So, I mean, even a place like Venice is not as crowded. Unfortunately, right now when we're talking, it's flooding. So it's pretty tragic. But I think that you should go somewhere where you just feel it in your gut. I just went to a place called Chefchaouen, Morocco. It's called the Blue City. I don't know if you're familiar with this city. It's absolutely beautiful, and it was painted blue all over it for many years, and it captured my fancy. So when I was last in Europe, I took a cheap airline flight from Paris. I just wanted to go there. There was no other place in Morocco. I had been to Morocco many times, but this is kind of off the beaten track. So I found a way to get there. It wasn't that expensive. When you kind of dig a little, you'll sometimes find this true. And I spent 5 days there, and it was my bucket list item, and it was magical. And I am so delighted I did it. Yeah, I think if you put your mind to something and prioritize it and sort of stick with it, you can go to these places. And I was very happy I did it. Sometimes they don't live up to your expectations when you have a kind of a dream, but sometimes they do. Yeah, this one did, and so I'm on to the next, whatever it may be, but I think that's a good thing to have, someplace to hope to see and to get to see.
Yeah. I have one last question, and it's just out of my own personal curiosity. Have you ever visited any of the countries in the Middle East?
Yes, I have.
And what was that like?
I've been to Dubai, Oman, Abu Dhabi, and all around there. Yeah, it's very interesting. There are some places I would not go to, and they're like Saudi Arabia, and there are places I definitely recommend, such as Oman and Dubai and Abu Dhabi. These are very open to women and safe and have beautiful, beautiful artwork now. They're developing their culture in terms of art. So some of the greatest museums are being built there in Abu Dhabi especially. And so I have been, and I think parts of it are great. Absolutely.
Okay. Well said. All right. Well, listen, this was great. I wish you luck with your book, and we hope to talk to you again after you do some more traveling.
Absolutely.
All right. Good talking to you, Lea. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Bye.
Bye.